when we dived into the water, our teamwork came to an end because suddenly all of us started swimming thinking we were in a competition. And what ended up happening is we ended up going different ways and getting lost.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 1, 2, 3 Teamwork. Today here with me is Vikram. Welcome, Vikram, to the show. Maybe you can give an introduction of yourself to our audience.
Hey, Anna, thanks for having me over. I've been watching the videos and really enjoying them. So it's fun to be on here today. So yeah, I'm Vikram. I would describe myself as someone who loves to start up new ventures, whether startups or even in a corporate environment. And I've been working in tech all of my life in some form or the other. And throughout my career, I've worked either starting up a new company or working in a company and starting new businesses up. So that's how I describe myself. And I've lived all over. My most recent gig has been in Singapore for the last 12 years, where I'm really enjoying myself.
Awesome. So good to have you with us. Let's get right at it. Can you share with us an example of memorable or inspiring teamwork?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and actually, my most memorable experience of teamwork is totally non-work related. And it's a sport, but it's not a team sport. It's an individual sport. And I was thinking about this, and I'll give you an example. And it really brings teamwork in very stark contrasts, how it works and when it doesn't work. So this was a few years ago, I think 2013. There were three of us friends who used to swim together, and we all love swimming and we were having a great time. And eventually we started training, and we'd go down to the beach during weekdays early in the morning, train, and we said, hey, why not take part in a competition? So we signed up for this 5K swim in the Philippines. And, we'd been training hard for it. We were in great shape, and we decided to go down. When we got there, there was this big storm coming through the Philippines, and the race got canceled, and it was quite an ugly storm. So we literally got there. We were going to drive to the coast and stay there the night and do this race the next day, but the race got canceled, but we were still driving towards it. And then at some point, it was just too bad. So we turned around, came back into Manila and stayed the night there. But then, the next day we thought about it, and we said, hey, while we were driving, we saw this big lake. We said, let's try and swim across the lake since we've come here anyway. And, so the next morning we headed out to the lake. It was still storming quite badly. And at various points, each one of us were going to drop out of this, right? We were just like, hey, this is too bad. We shouldn't be doing this. But somehow one of us, one or the other, pushed this further. And just as a team, when one was not motivated, the other sort of pushed ahead, and we finally ended up doing the swim. But the interesting part is along the shore, there were these small little villages, and we had to find a boat to go with us, and no one wanted to go out with us in the storm. But eventually we found a person to go with us. When we dived into the water, our teamwork came to an end because suddenly all of us started swimming thinking we were in a competition. And we started instead, and it was 6 kilometers, right? So we started swimming as though we were in a competition. And what ended up happening is we ended up going different ways and getting lost. And there was only one boat, and it was a disaster. We eventually got to the other side, but it was a totally suboptimal experience where it was exhilarating finishing the race, but finishing the swim, but it was a lot slower than we expected. So, that was really memorable to me because the start of it, we would have never done something so crazy if it hadn't been for teamwork. But the opposite, when we didn't swim as a team and started competing with each other, it was pretty disastrous. So, that stuck in my mind. And throughout my career, I keep coming back to that in terms of in various forms. It's sort of stuck and made a big impression on me.
Wow, what a story. What a story. I remember that storm in 2013 in Philippines. I had some friends got stuck in some of the beautiful islands. So yeah. That's Wow, that's a memorable experience for sure. Thanks for sharing. Hey, when it comes to working in teams, what do you typically find most challenging?
Working in a team is always challenging. It's fun, but it's always challenging. To me, it's always been, balancing individual goals versus team goals. And, that in some shape or form, always comes up. And, it's good not to be surprised by that, right? So I always find that a challenge because it always does come up, and it's something that needs to be thought through sensitively where, the team are achieving their goals and individual goals are taken care of. It's super important. I've become more aware of this in my, I work at AWS now where I lead an advisory function, and I've realized one of the things is why it's important, especially if you want to scale, right? If you want to really scale, you're going to have many teams working. And if there isn't some way to deal with this individual versus team
Mm,
goals, it becomes challenging. And what I've come to accept is the best way of sort of doing this is actually having some mechanisms in place to do this. And I found, that was one of my learnings is you have mechanisms that cater for this. So, and I'm sure all of you are very familiar. That's why we have the team norming at the start to understand what people's goals are and what team goals are. That's why instead of, in AWS, there's an interesting thing called, the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion should count the least. Otherwise, people in the team just don't get to express themselves. And so mechanisms like that, to put in place where people get to express themselves, their opinions are valued, and their individual goals are taken into consideration, are important to me. I found that balance quite challenging to work with.
interesting, interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a point that we see a lot. Yeah, how do you balance your own individual objectives and goals with where the team wants to go? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so and then what is your secret ingredient? I mean, either to fix that or in general, like how do you make teams work?
It's really simple. I've found that there's my secret ingredient is has always been to really, when I'm working in a team or leading a team, is to do just one thing or one or two things which are unselfish, which are not going to further my individual goal, but is going to help somebody else along or the team, totally unselfish. And I try to do this. I always try to do this, and what I find is there's an immediate return in terms of,
Mm,
it builds trust. Like people just start to trust you, and then working in a team is sort of a bit effortless. So I always try to reach this stage of working in a team where you don't really feel the urge of, very loud communication pushing people forward, but try to reach a stage where it's much more natural, where people are just doing it because that's how they
right,
work.
right.
And I find that happens, for me, it happens best by establishing trust, and that trust comes through doing something really unselfish. So there've been
Anything.
instances, yeah, and anything, so it might be somebody struggling on something, just jump in to help them out. It could be, I've joined a team which somebody else is leading, and or I'm co-leading, but I'll do something to make the other person really further their goal along, and that establishes trust immediately. But yeah, finding an excuse to be unselfish and work through. I find that really works for me.
Amazing. Wow. So great. It's only a short chat, but it's been so great to have you. Thank you so much for coming, Vikram.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna.